The air was thick with smoke, and the acrid scent of burning metal as Kael, the towering alien warrior, stood amidst the ruins of what was once a bustling city. His shimmering blue skin glistened under the flickering lights of the remnants, while his piercing silver eyes scanned the horizon for threats. The alien invasion had turned Earth into a battlefield, and Kael was determined to protect the fragile remnants of humanity. With a swift motion, he unsheathed his energy blade, its electric hum resonating like a battle cry. As he charged forward, the chaos around him was deafening. Explosions echoed in the distance, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. A group of invading aliens, grotesque and menacing, approached him with malicious intent. Kael's instincts kicked in. He lunged at the nearest foe, his blade slicing through the air with precision. The alien fell with a shriek, and Kael pivoted, tackling another enemy to the ground. "For Earth!" he roared, his voice a deep rumble that carried over the cacophony. The battle raged on, and Kael fought like a force of nature, his movements fluid and powerful. He felt the weight of his mission on his shoulders. It was his destiny to protect humanity, even if it meant standing alone against the tide of destruction. The invaders fell one by one, but even as he claimed victory over them, the war was far from over. The city was a graveyard of broken dreams and lost lives, and Kael's heart ached for the people he had sworn to defend. Amidst the turmoil, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A young woman, her face streaked with dirt and determination, darted through the debris. Elara. He had seen her before, always rushing into danger, her heart beating with fierce courage. She was unlike anyone he had encountered, so full of life, even in the face of death. He watched, captivated, as she knelt beside a pile of rubble, her hands working furiously to free a group of children trapped beneath it. "Hold on, I'm coming," she shouted, her voice rising above the din. Kael felt something shift within him as he observed her tenacity. She didn't hesitate, didn't falter. Instead, she pushed herself to the limit, her spirit unyielding. "You can do it. Just a little more," she encouraged, her eyes wide with resolve. The sight stirred a deep longing in Kael, a desire to protect not just humanity, but the very essence of it that Elara embodied. He moved closer, his heart pounding as he witnessed her bravery. With a final push, Elara freed the last child, pulling them from the debris just as another explosion rocked the ground nearby. She turned, breathless, and met Kael's gaze, her eyes sparkling with defiance and hope. "Why are you just standing there?" she asked, her voice fierce despite her exhaustion. "We need to keep moving." Kael stepped forward, his towering figure looming over her. "You should not put yourself in such danger," he replied, his voice low and rumbling like distant thunder. "These battles are not for the faint of heart," Elara scoffed, brushing off the dust from her clothes. "And you think I'm faint of heart? I'm not afraid of these monsters. Someone has to fight for the innocent, and if that's me, then so be it." There was a fire in her words that ignited something within Kael, a warmth he hadn't felt in ages. "I am here to protect you," he said, his tone more earnest than ever. "It is my mission to ensure humanity survives this onslaught." Why would you care?" Elara challenged, crossing her arms defiantly. "You're not one of us. You're an alien. What do you know about humanity?" Kael hesitated, caught off guard by her question. "I know that you possess a strength that is admirable," he admitted, his silver eyes locking onto hers. "You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is worth protecting." Elara raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on her face. "And what about your own kind? Do you not have a duty to them?" "My duty is to protect this world," Kael stated, a sense of conviction in his voice. "And I will fight for those who deserve a chance to live." Their eyes held a charged silence, a moment suspended in time where their differences seemed to blur. In that instant, Kael felt an unfamiliar warmth bloom in his chest, a connection that transcended their species. But before he could delve deeper, the distant sound of sirens interrupted them, pulling them back to the chaos surrounding them. "Come," Kael urged, extending a hand toward her. "There is still much to do." Elara hesitated for just a moment before taking his hand, feeling a strange sense of unity as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead. As they moved forward together, The weight of their worlds pressed down on them. But in that moment, they were no longer alone. Elara stood resolute, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. The city lay in ruins around them, the aftermath of yet another brutal alien assault. But she had made her decision. She would not be a bystander any longer. "Kael," she called, her voice cutting through the haze of smoke and debris. The alien warrior turned, his formidable presence a beacon amidst the devastation. "Elara," he replied, his voice deep and resonant. "This path is fraught with danger. You must understand your limitations." "Limitations," she echoed, incredulous. "You think I'm going to stand by while you take on this mission alone? I want to help. I need to help." Kael studied her, the silver of his eyes reflecting a flicker of admiration and concern. It was a strange juxtaposition, this fierce human spirit against the backdrop of destruction. "You are brave, but bravery does not guarantee survival. The enemy will not hesitate to strike at anyone who crosses their path." "I know the risks," Elara insisted, her determination unwavering. "But I can't just sit back and let you fight my battles. If we're going to save humanity, I want to be a part of it." With a heavy sigh, Kael relented. "Very well, but you must follow my lead and do exactly as I say." "Deal," she replied, a triumphant grin breaking across her face. Together, they set out towards the hidden alien outpost, navigating the wreckage of the city with a sense of purpose. Their journey was filled with tension, each step a reminder of the dangers they faced. As they moved through the shadows, Kael kept a watchful eye on their surroundings, his heightened alien senses alert for any signs of danger. Elara, however, was equally determined to contribute. "What's our plan once we reach this outpost?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "We gather intelligence," Kael replied, his tone serious. "We need to understand their intentions. If we can disrupt their plans, we may stand a chance." Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush caught their attention. Kael's muscles tensed, and he gestured for silence. Just then, a group of hostile aliens emerged, their grotesque features twisted in sneers. Well, what do we have here?" one of them taunted, eyeing Kael with contempt. "A traitor and his pet human." Elara felt a surge of anger and fear. "Kael, stay behind me," she shouted, stepping forward, her heart pounding. "Do not be foolish, Elara," Kael cautioned, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is not your fight." But she shook her head, determination etched on her face. "No, I won't let them talk to you like that. You deserve better." The alien leader chuckled darkly. "And what does the little human think she can do? You're nothing but a distraction, a weakness for Kael." Elara's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm a weakness? I can stand up for him, just as much as he stands up for me. You have no idea what we're capable of together." Kael's heart swelled at her fierce loyalty, but the tension in the air was palpable. The aliens moved closer, their weapons drawn. "You'll regret this, traitor," the leader hissed. In a split second, Kael sprang into action. He pushed Elara behind him, his body a shield against the impending assault. With a swift, fluid motion, he engaged the aliens, his combat skills on full display. Elara watched, both awed and terrified, as Kael dispatched their attackers with precision. But as the last alien fell, she couldn't shake the sense of dread. "Kael, are you all right?" she asked, rushing to his side. "I am unharmed," he replied, a hint of exhaustion creeping into his voice. But as he glanced at her, he noticed a gash on her arm, blood seeping through her sleeve. "Your wounds," he murmured, kneeling beside her. "I'm fine," she insisted. "It's just a scratch." Kael's silver eyes darkened with concern. "You are not fine. Allow me to tend to it." He carefully examined her injury, his touch gentle yet firm. "You are reckless, Elara. Your life is precious." She looked into his eyes, feeling a connection deeper than mere duty. "And I want to protect what I can protect you too. We're in this together." As Kael cleaned the wound, a realization washed over him. This fierce human, with her unwavering spirit, was slowly breaking down the walls he had built around himself. He was torn between his duty to protect humanity and the burgeoning feelings he had for her. "Your courage is admirable," he finally said, his voice low. "But it worries me. I cannot bear the thought of losing you." Elara smiled softly, her heart swelling. "You won't lose me, Kael. I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, amidst the ruins of a shattered world, their connection deepened. Each bandage wrapped around her wound felt like a promise, one of loyalty, of partnership, and perhaps of something more. As Kael and Elara stealthily made their way through the shadowy corridors of the alien outpost, the air was thick with tension. The dimly lit passageways echoed with distant sounds of alien machinery and muffled voices. Kael's heart raced, each thump a reminder of his dual purpose: to protect Elara and gather crucial intelligence for the impending battle against their invaders. "Stay close," Kael whispered, glancing back at Elara, whose determined eyes mirrored his resolve. Her auburn hair, slightly tousled, framed her face, highlighting the fire within her. "We need to find the command center." Elara nodded, her expression a mix of fear and excitement. "I can't believe we're actually doing this. We have to stop them before it's too late." As they approached a heavy door, they pressed against the wall, listening intently. The voices inside were clear now, and Kael's grip tightened on the hilt of his weapon. "Kael is a traitor. He defies our laws by protecting humans," a voice sneered. "His actions will not go unpunished. The invasion will proceed as planned, and he will be dealt with accordingly." Elara's breath hitched, and she turned to Kael, her eyes wide. "They're talking about you. They think you're a traitor." Kael's jaw clenched. "I knew my actions would raise suspicion among my people, but I didn't foresee this level of betrayal." The weight of his past choices pressed heavily on him, but he pushed it aside. "We must gather the information and leave." As they slipped inside, the command room buzzed with activity. Kael's keen eyes scanned the screens displaying tactical maps and troop movements. He motioned for Elara to stay low as they crept further into the room, avoiding the attention of the guards. "Look!" Kael pointed to a holographic display that outlined the invasion plans. "They're planning to strike several key cities simultaneously. We have to get this data to the Resistance." Elara's fingers danced over a nearby control panel, her face lit by the glow of the screens. "I can download the intel, but we need time. If they discover us—" Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Kael's instincts kicked in, and he grabbed Elara's arm, pulling her behind a large console. They held their breaths, the tension palpable in the air. "Did you hear that?" a guard's voice called out, sounding suspicious. Kael's silver eyes narrowed, and he focused on the guard's movements. "We need to act quickly. If they find us—" "Got it," Elara whispered triumphantly as the download completed. "Let's go." Just as they were about to make their escape, the door burst open, and several guards stormed in. "Halt! You're under arrest!" one of them shouted, pointing a weapon directly at them. Kael's instincts kicked in. "Run!" he commanded, pushing Elara ahead of him as he engaged the guards. His movements were fluid and powerful, taking down one guard with a swift kick while deflecting a blaster shot aimed at Elara. "Kael!" Elara shouted, her heart racing as she ducked behind a column, fear coursing through her. "We need to stick together." But Kael was already fighting, his body moving with a grace that belied his size. He took down another guard but felt a sharp pain in his side as a blaster bolt grazed him. Gritting his teeth through the pain, he turned to find Elara still safely hidden. "Keep moving," he urged, his voice strained but determined. "I'll hold them off." Elara hesitated, torn between her concern for him and the urgency of their escape. "I can't leave you." "Trust me," Kael roared, his eyes fierce. "You must get out of here. The intel is our only chance." With a final glance, Elara turned and bolted down the corridor, adrenaline fueling her speed. Kael fought valiantly, but the odds were against him. He could hear the shouts of reinforcements approaching, and his heart raced with both fear and determination. "I won't let them take you," he shouted after Elara, but she was already out of sight. As the last guard fell, Kael took a moment to catch his breath, feeling the weight of his choice pressing heavily upon him. He had to save her, but what would that cost him? The moment of reprieve was short-lived. He knew he had to follow her, but as he turned to leave, a blinding light enveloped him, and everything went dark. In the chaos, Elara had reached a dead end, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned, ready to fight her way back, but the sound of heavy footsteps echoed ominously behind her. "Got you now," a guard sneered, grabbing her arm. "Let go of me," Elara shouted, struggling against his grip. Panic surged within her, but she refused to give in. "Kael!" she screamed, hoping against hope that he would hear her. But the corridor remained silent, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her like a heavy fog. She was trapped, and the realization hit her like a cold wave. Kael had risked everything for her, and now, it seemed, he might have to face the consequences alone. Kael stood at the edge of the makeshift command center, a repurposed warehouse that smelled of sweat and smoke, as the members of the resistance gathered for a briefing. The room was filled with tension. Faces were drawn tight with worry, and murmurs of distrust circulated like a dark cloud. He felt the weight of their suspicion like a physical blow. Despite his towering frame and alien heritage, Kael felt small under their scrutinizing gazes. "Why should we trust him?" a voice barked from the back of the room. A tall man with a scar running down his cheek stepped forward, fists clenched at his sides. "He's one of them. How do we know he won't turn on us the moment it suits him?" Kael clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to lash out. He glanced at Elara, who stood beside him, her fiery spirit evident in the way she squared her shoulders. She had been his anchor, the one constant in the storm that was his life since he had decided to protect humanity. "He's not our enemy." Elara's voice rang out clear and unwavering. "Kael has risked everything to save us. He saved me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here today." The room fell silent, every eye turning toward her, but the doubt had not dissipated. Kael could feel the tension rising as he stepped forward, ready to defend himself. "I have fought against my own kind to protect you," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I am seen as a traitor among my people. I chose to stand with you, to fight for humanity's survival. You have to believe me." Another member of the resistance, a woman with dark hair, pulled back tightly, crossed her arms. "Words mean nothing without action, Kael. How do we know you won't betray us when your people come for you?" "Because I would rather die than see you harmed," he replied, surprising even himself with the intensity of his conviction. The truth of his feelings for humanity, and for Elara, surged within him. Elara stepped closer, her eyes shining with determination. "We have to trust him. Together, we can form a plan to stop the invasion. But we can't do that if we're divided." She turned to the others, her voice steady. "Kael has knowledge of their strategies, their technology. We need that if we're going to win." The resistance members exchanged glances, the tension slowly easing. Kael could see a flicker of hope in their eyes, and he felt a surge of gratitude toward Elara for standing up for him. As the meeting progressed, Kael found himself sharing crucial information about the alien forces and their tactics. His heart raced as he explained everything he knew, feeling the trust slowly building in the room. With Elara by his side, he felt emboldened, ready to fight for a cause greater than himself. Hours later, as the meeting concluded and the resistance members trickled out to prepare for the imminent conflict, Kael and Elara remained behind. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken emotions, and Kael could no longer deny the intensity of his feelings for her. "Elara," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face him, her eyes wide and expectant. "I need to thank you for believing in me," he said, stepping closer, the distance between them charged with electricity. "You stood up for me when no one else would. It means more to me than you can imagine." Elara's breath caught, and she looked up at him, a mixture of admiration and something deeper shining in her eyes. "You deserve their trust, Kael. You've proven yourself time and time again." Without thinking, Kael reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the world around them faded away. The barriers between their species, their pasts, and their fears seemed to dissolve. Slowly, he leaned down, capturing her lips with his in a gentle yet passionate kiss. Elara melted against him, her hands finding their way to his shoulders, pulling him closer. When they finally pulled away, Both breathless, Kael's heart raced. "We shouldn't, it complicates things," he murmured, his mind racing with the implications of their connection. "I don't care," Elara replied fiercely, her cheeks flushed. "You're worth the risk to me, Kael." But before they could delve deeper into their emotions, a sudden crackle of static interrupted the moment. Kael's communicator beeped urgently, and a chill washed over him as he answered. "Kael, you need to see this," a voice from his home planet warned through the device. "We have intercepted a message. Your people are planning to invade Earth. They seek retribution for your betrayal." The weight of the revelation crashed down on him like a tidal wave. Elara's eyes widened. Fear etched across her face. Kael felt the icy grip of dread clenching his heart. He had made a choice, but now he was faced with the consequences. His people were coming for the very world he had sworn to protect. "Kael," Elara whispered, her voice trembling. "I have to confront this," he said, his voice strained. The reality of his actions loomed before him like a shadow, threatening to consume everything he had fought for. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery orange glow across the war-torn landscape, Kael and Elara gathered the remaining members of the resistance in an abandoned warehouse. The air was thick with tension and the scent of metal and dust. A flickering overhead light illuminated the determined faces of the humans who had put their trust in Kael despite their initial mistrust. "Listen up," Kael's voice boomed, his tone both commanding and urgent. "We don't have much time. The fleet will be here within hours, and we need a plan that combines our strengths." His silver eyes scanned the room, landing on Elara, who stood beside him, her expression fierce and unwavering. Elara stepped forward, her heart racing, but she remained resolute. "We can use Kael's technology to our advantage. If we can intercept their communication systems, we can disrupt their command and buy ourselves some time." There was a murmur of agreement among the group, but Kael could sense the lingering doubt in some of their minds. "Are you sure you can trust him?" a gruff voice called from the back. It belonged to Marcus, a seasoned soldier with a weathered face. "He's one of them, after all. What if this is all a trick?" Kael clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of the accusation. "I am not your enemy," he replied, his voice steady. "I risked everything to protect your kind. If I wanted to betray you, I would have done so long ago." Elara interjected, stepping in front of him. "Kael has fought alongside us, bled for us. We need to focus on the real threat. We can't let suspicion tear us apart now." Her fierce loyalty sparked a flicker of respect in the eyes of the resistance fighters. "All right, let's hear the plan," Marcus conceded, crossing his arms but softening his stance. Kael nodded, grateful for Elara's support. "We will set up a makeshift comm station using the remnants of their technology that we scavenged. I can create a feedback loop that will confuse their sensors. This will give us a window to attack their ships before they can fully deploy." Elara felt a swell of hope. "And while they're distracted, we'll launch our ground assault. We need to hit them hard and fast, before they realize what's happening." As the room buzzed with strategies and tactical discussions, Kael felt himself growing more at ease. For the first time, he was part of something greater than his own conflict. He looked at Elara, her spirit igniting a warmth inside him that he struggled to comprehend. "Before we move forward," Kael said, gathering everyone's attention once more, "there's something I need to tell you all." The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. "I am the last of a noble warrior race. I have been bound by ancient laws that dictate my worth and my life. If I fail in this battle, it will mean death for me, not just from the enemy, but from my own kind." Gasps echoed in the warehouse. Elara's heart raced as she looked into Kael's eyes. "What do you mean by your own kind?" Kael inhaled sharply, his silver eyes reflecting the flickering light. "My people view my actions as treachery. My decision to protect humanity is seen as the ultimate betrayal. If I cannot protect you, I will be hunted down and executed." Elara stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Kael, you're not alone in this. We're in this together, and we will fight for you, too." As the group solidified their plans, the tension in the room transformed into a fierce determination. Each member of the resistance understood that this battle was not just for Earth, but for Kael's very life. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as a distant rumble echoed through the warehouse. The ground trembled underfoot. Kael's heart sank as he rushed to the window, his eyes narrowing at the sight of darkening skies. A massive alien fleet loomed on the horizon, the ships glimmering ominously against the fading light. "They're here," he said, his voice low and filled with dread. Elara joined him, her expression a mix of fear and resolve. "We can't wait any longer," she said, gripping his arm. "It's time to put our plan into action." Kael nodded, determination blazing in his chest. Together, they would face the impending storm, united by a bond forged in the fires of war and the promise of hope. The battlefield was a cacophony of chaos, with flames licking at the remnants of fallen structures, and the air thick with the acrid scent of smoke and desperation. Kael's towering figure, bound by chains forged from his own people's technology, stood as a stark reminder of the wedge that had driven him between two worlds. The alien soldiers surrounding him, their eyes glinting with a mix of duty and betrayal, had captured him in a moment of vulnerability. Elara, watching from a distance, felt her heart drop into the pit of her stomach as she realized the depth of his peril. "Kael," she cried out, her voice slicing through the din of the battle. Her determination ignited a spark of hope in her chest, propelling her forward. "I won't leave you." His silver eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of pain and admiration. "Elara, you must not," he began, but the words were lost as the alien commander stepped forward, a sneer painting his features. "Ah, the human who believes she can save him," the commander mocked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Your loyalty is misplaced. He has betrayed his kind, and you will share his fate if you do not turn back now." Elara squared her shoulders, refusing to back down. "You don't know him. He's not a traitor. He's a protector. He fights for humanity, for all of us." Her voice rang with passion, but the commander's laughter echoed cruelly. "Fighting for humanity? He is the last of a noble lineage, and yet he chooses to side with mere mortals. Pathetic." The commander stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can save him? You'll only ensure your own destruction." With a surge of defiance, Elara broke free from the throng of resistance fighters who had gathered behind her. "I'm not afraid of you. If you want to take him, you'll have to go through me." The fire in her words ignited the spirits of those around her, and they rallied behind her, a united front against the alien menace. As the commander hesitated, doubt flickering across his face, Elara seized the moment. She had to uncover the truth about Kael, to reveal the strength of his heritage that could sway the tide of battle. "Kael," she shouted, her voice fierce and unwavering, "tell them who you really are." Kael's gaze flickered with disbelief, but he knew she was right. The time had come to reveal the truth that he had hidden from both her and himself. "I am Kael, last of the noble Arcani's line," he declared, his voice booming across the battlefield. "I have fought against tyranny and oppression all my life. My betrayal is a means to an end, a coup against a regime that seeks to destroy both our worlds." Gasps rippled through the alien ranks, confusion marring their expressions. The commander's composure wavered for a moment, enough for Elara to press on, sensing the shift in the tide. "If you truly care for your people, then join us. We can unite against the real threat, the oppression you all suffer under this tyrant. Kael is not a traitor. He is the key to our salvation." The murmurs grew louder, and the soldiers shifted uneasily. Elara saw the flicker of hope in their eyes, the quiet desire for change stirring within them. The commander's expression hardened. "You think they will follow a traitor? You think they will trust a human?" "Trust is earned," Elara replied, her voice steady. "But it starts with understanding. You have a choice. Cling to the past or forge a new future together." She turned to Kael, her heart racing with determination. "We can end this war, but only if you stand with me." Kael's heart swelled with emotion as he processed her words. The fear that had gripped him began to loosen its hold. He raised his head high, embracing his identity as a leader. "Together, we can build a new alliance. Together, we can defeat the true enemy." A silence fell over the battlefield, a moment suspended in time. Then, like a wave crashing against the shore, the soldiers began to shift, murmurs of agreement rippling through their ranks. Elara felt a surge of hope as she watched the commander's face twist in fury and disbelief. "Fools!" he screamed. But the tide had turned. The soldiers began to lower their weapons, eyes flickering with the promise of change. In that moment, the lines drawn in the sand began to blur, and the possibility of unity blossomed amidst the chaos. Kael and Elara stood side by side, their hearts entwined in a bond forged through trials and sacrifices. In that moment, they understood that loyalty and love were not bound by species, but by the shared hope for a brighter future. Together, they had the power to rewrite the fate of both their worlds, and as the sun broke through the smoke-filled skies, it illuminated a path toward peace, where sacrifice would lead to a new beginning.